Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about the power of the Service Academy Network. I know we're always all Naval Academy here, but in honor of kind of leading up to Army Week and the Army-Navy game, I wanted to get a mixture and bring in some West Point guys as well to talk about this beautiful rivalry, but how it transitions into being this incredible brotherhood outside of the service. And so today I'm joined by Brad Harrison, who is a graduate of West Point and now the managing partner of a venture capital firm called Scout out in Austin, Texas, really on the intersection of emerging technologies and national security. And so this is going to be a really cool opportunity. He recently wrote a pretty big check in support of leading the seed round, which is like an early investment round of a company called Havoc AI. And Havoc AI was founded and is run by the CEO, who is a Naval Academy graduate from the class of '07, Paul Lwin. So I have Brad, I have Paul, and we're going to be talking all about Army-Navy. We're going to be talking about the relationship about this, and we're going to be talking about how the service academies are also an incredible avenue to develop the foundation for successful entrepreneurs in life who are continuing to live a life of service and contribute to national defense and national security, but now through innovation and investing in innovation. And so when we talk about this life of service through the service academies, it continues even after your time in uniform. And so this is a perfect opportunity for us to highlight the power of the Service Academy Network. Again, a West Point graduate investing in the company of a Naval Academy graduate, all in support of national defense. So if you want a little insight into Army-Navy characteristics and dynamics, a little bit of insight into, again, the power of the Service Academy Network outside of the military, then you're really gonna enjoy this episode. So make sure to check it out. Let me know what you think. Leave any questions you have in the comments, and I hope you enjoy the listen. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right, hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Paul and Brad, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. For anyone who may not know both of y'all, we'll give the honor to the guest here. Brad, as the resident West Point graduate in the group, if you don't mind just giving a little rundown of where you're from, what actually brought you to West Point, New York to go to the military academy, a little bit about your background in the Army, and now currently what you're doing at Scout.
Sure. So I'm Brad Harrison. I'm originally from New York. So when I was a kid, I made a bunch of trips up to West Point. And, I grew up when the movie Taps came out with Tom Cruise and Sean Penn and Timothy Hutton. And, my grandfather had been in the Navy. And so military service had always been important to me. And I don't know, I had like this profound moment. I think I was fighting with my parents when I was 16. And, I thought I was going to go play football at Princeton. And I went and did a visit at West Point and then applied early, got in, and did really well there. Was a distinguished honor grad, spent 5 years active duty, was an airborne ranger in the infantry, got out in 99 and used the vocational rehab program to get tuition assistance to go to grad school at MIT Sloan. I should note I still borrowed my maximum amount of school loans so I could live really large, which is not advisable, but I did it anyway. And then after MIT, I moved to DC and worked for a gentleman named Ted Leonsis, who was the vice chair of AOL, went to a startup and then started investing in 2009 into the types of entrepreneurs that would then become the role model for what is now Scout Ventures. And Scout's been around 15 years, and we invest at the intersection of national security and critical technology innovation. So AI, autonomy, robotics, drones, cyber, quantum as a sector, which is quantum compute, quantum encryption, and quantum materials, space as a sector, and power. And so, that's kind of me.
I love it. Well, I appreciate it. And we're excited to have you on here to talk, again, all these different aspects. And in relation, now we have Paul. Paul, do you mind giving a quick rundown and brief introduction to yourself as well, especially in relation to how all three of us are on this podcast now together today?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on. So I'm Paul Lwin. I grew up in Los Angeles. Kind of why I went to the Naval Academy is I'm originally a refugee from a country called Myanmar. And I came here when I was 10. And, the first time I saw someone in uniform, a U.S. uniform, was at the embassy. And as you can imagine, that kind of resonated with me. So growing up in LA, wanted to give back and saw the Naval Academy seemed awesome. Obviously, saw Top Gun, wanted to be an astronaut. So applied, got in luckily, went to the academy, graduated in '07. Afterwards, I went and flew prowlers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then got really interested in defense tech around that time. I think, do you know what a prowler is? It's a 40-year-old airplane that I was flying in 2010, jamming digital signals. So it's mind blowing, right, to do that. And you realize, hey, the warfighters need better tools, right? We have the money, we have the technology sector. And so got interested around the time DIU was starting to come out in 2015. So went to test pilot school and then got involved in flight tests for F-18 next gen weapon systems and realized that I could help from the outside, with the insight I got in these program offices. So just like Brett, I left the Navy, used the GI Bill to go get an MBA at Yale, and then got into a lot of defense tech companies, Joby Aviation, helping them sell eVTOLs to the Air Force, and then Regent, who's building this thing, essentially a flying boat. And it was around last year, I went to a conference with Undersecretary Xu, where she brought in all the maritime players, and she had asked them, hey, if I give you money, can you build thousands of these? And there wasn't anyone that could give a definitive answer. So I started thinking, I was like, I've been building things in my garage, specifically robotic boats. I knew the technology that existed. I knew that I could go build the team to do it. And so I did it. I quit my job in January of last year and started Havoc AI. We're building a maritime autonomy platform with the goal of building thousands of autonomous surface vessels for the DoD and commercial customers over the next 2 years, and building the entire ecosystem that is required for humans to interact with thousands of these autonomous systems.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is so awesome to get all of us together, because one piece y'all both left out is that Havoc AI actually just closed a very successful seed round, which was led by Scout Ventures. And so, we have the United States Military Academy plus United States Naval Academy crossover here, the Service Academy network supporting each other, and two very successful entrepreneurs in their own right. One kind of, again, founding this defense tech company, and another with a very successful venture capital firm. And again, both working together towards the common goal of improving national security and national defense as well. And so, what I want to turn it over to you first, and Brad, if you don't mind kind of taking the reins, is the first question here is, in this very successful career path that you've had in entrepreneurship, what about your education at West Point really set the foundation for who you are today and has kind of allowed you to go along this path as a successful entrepreneur?
Well, I think part of it is the fact that you have accountability and responsibility ingrained into everything that you do. And so part of being an entrepreneur is that it's a really, really lonely job. And if you're not organized and you're not accountable, then it's really, really hard to build a scalable business. The second thing is perseverance, which, doesn't matter whether you went to West Point or the Naval Academy, you likely started with about 500 more people than you graduated with. And that perseverance is another part of the entrepreneurial journey that I think is, having the staying power to survive the ups and downs. And then the third one is leadership. Over the years, what I've realized is I'm probably much more of a leadership coach that is an investor as opposed to an investor.
Sure.
Right? Because we focus on those same three traits: leadership, perseverance, and kind of, accountability and responsibility are the same things we look at in these entrepreneurs that come from the service academies.
Sure.
Where by knowing that they have, and again, there's some rotten apples in all of them, present company excluded, but for the most part, those basic foundational skills around accountability, around perseverance, and around leadership are ingrained in what we did at the academy, reinforced by our military service, enhanced by graduate school, if that was part of the journey. And that provides a framework for us at Scout to really, be super impactful.
Without a doubt. And Paul, for you and your experience as well, kind of on this journey, especially on the newer end of all this in building your company, what about your experience from the Naval Academy kind of set the foundation? Do you have any specific experiences or memories that you have that like really set the foundation for who you are in this journey of building a company?
Yeah, echoing what Brett said, right? I think a lot of times as an early stage sort of founder, it is lonely. It is all on you to do everything. And so this is going to sound very lame, but I don't know if Brett had to memorize these things, but like Message to Garcia, right, was one of the first things we had to memorize at the academy. I think that's obviously stayed with me throughout naval aviation, and right now it's I think like it applies to me a lot, right? Like the fact that like I just have to go do it, right? And the teammates that I hire, that's a core skill I look for, right? It's like, hey, can I tell you to do something, and can you go do it, right? Can you not ask me 1,000 questions just because on a typical day, we're putting out 100 fires and we're trying to build things that are innovative that no one's ever done before. So those kind of skills, so we end up hiring a lot of Service Academy graduates because of that, right? That's a skill that I think is ingrained in us from day one. And the other thing is Man in the Arena, right? Another poem we had to memorize. Everyone's a critic, right? Everyone's a critic. And, Brett is right. I think from the investor side, he has been a great mentor, right? He hasn't been, he's given a lot of good advice, but there's a lot of people involved in what I do day to day that just provides criticism, and you kind of take a step back, be like, okay, I have to keep moving the ball forward. And that goes to what Brett talks about, like persevering, right? Like just walking through the things. And I try to instill that onto the team right now, right? It's like, hey, it's okay to fail, right? People are going to tell you you're doing it wrong, that, you're going to fail, that this is the wrong approach, but no one really knows the answer, right? If this was easy, if startups were easy, most of them wouldn't fail. And what we're trying to figure out is how to deliver to the customer, in this case, the warfighter, exactly what they need, right? And to do that, we have to be willing to fail, willing to take criticism, and then keep improving. So I think, our Service Academy educations, that's what it is, right? That's what plebe year is. And so I equate being an early stage founder to being a plebe.
I love that. For me, that's huge. I'm right there with you. So I was in 26 company at the academy, and we were the Rough Riders, which was all a shout out to Teddy Roosevelt, who is the author of Man in the Arena, right? And so, even to today, I got Man in the Arena written on my whiteboard at my home. Like that's my motivating factor, right? Like you're talking about in this world, in the entrepreneurial grind, like everyone has an opinion, but not everyone's actually doing the thing, right? And so, it's very easy to talk from the outside, but it's another thing to be in the battle, in the grind, constantly working to make these things happen. And so I'm going to turn it right back to you, actually, which is when you got out of the service, you're done flying planes. Did you know that you wanted to stay in the defense industry? I know you went to Yale and got your MBA, but while you were going there, did you have this vision of coming back and staying in support of the defense industry? Or what was that transition like that led you back into supporting national defense, this time just via innovation, and then for Brad, investing in innovation?
Yeah. In 2018, when I got out, I wanted to go and start a defense tech company, just because coming straight from like flight test and program offices, talking about all of the innovation and the tools of warfighters see, I was arrogant enough to be like, I could do it. I'll get out. I'll just go start a defense tech company. And that's when my mentors were like, whoa, like, slow down. Like you have no idea what you're talking about. You might have been awesome in the military, but you have no idea what the commercial sector is, right? How startups work, how VC VCs look at you? How to talk to VCs? And so that's why, I went to grad school, and then I run a bunch of defense tech companies just to, one, help them get the awesome things they build into the DoD, but also kind of like figure out what later stage companies, how they're interacting with the DoD, and what very early stage companies are interacting with the DoD. And, last year, I jumped into Havoc AI because there was a very relevant need, right? I think, this is in the public sphere, right? I think 2027 is coming up, right? And especially for the Navy, it's very relevant. The competitors, unfortunately, aren't meeting that need, like that clear customer need at the price point they need. So I felt compelled to go and do it. And same thing with the other two founders, Joe and Andrew, both a Navy and Air Force vet. I think we're very mission focused. And that's what we're here to do, right? We are dual use, but we're defense first because we think, we can provide the tools to, help prevent this conflict from coming up if we can give our side the tools that they need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as we jump into this and talk a little bit more about national defense, national security, but also just the Service Academy network supporting each other, I think the first piece before we even get there is the fact that the rivalry exists while you're at West Point or you're in Annapolis. And so, Brad, I actually got a question for you, man, which is all about life at West Point. Did y'all have like a Navy week? Like, I know when we're about to play Army in the football game, we have an Army week. Did you have like a week leading up to the football game that was just full of shenanigans and a bunch of crazy stuff going on at West Point?
I mean, obviously, Air Force Week, Army Week, we get we get all the, the helicopters and the A-10s and all the exciting things to fly over, to make us feel good about ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. We got all our Spirit missions.
Yeah.
Maybe one year we may have stolen the goat.
Brought him in.
I'm not saying I was involved. It may have allegedly been members of the rugby team, but listen, I think that rivalry is good. I would say post the academy, what we tend to notice the most is that at West Point and within the Army, the focus is really on leading soldiers.
Yep.
The Navy tends to be way heavier related to big pieces of equipment and systems, right? So you meet nuclear engineers, you meet pilots, you meet submariners, you meet surface, you meet people by their functions and their equipment. Mm-hmm. And so there's differences in the nuances of those leadership skills that they develop in those positions, right? If you're an Army officer in an infantry unit, you're going to go from leading 34 to 129 to, it's very clear. If you're a pilot, maybe you command a squadron or maybe you just fly the whole time, right? And be the best at managing your equipment. Mm-hmm. And so that comes through a little bit in the leadership of these companies and how we need to mentor the entrepreneurs. I would say, from the very beginning when Paul and I were working together, we had a common view of kind of what we needed to do with some issues around personnel and what we needed to do around funding and what we needed to do around the cap table. And so I think in that case, it was really easy for us to get off on the right foot because I was able to help Paul with some of the more challenging decisions he had at the beginning. Some of those are related to people and some of those are related to like, okay, do I want to take money from these people? Do I, after he had already decided that he wanted to take money from Scout.
Indeed. And then, for Paul, what about you? Do you have any, just to go back, do you have any funny Army Week stories that you specifically remember from your time as a midshipman?
I mean, what Brett said, right? All the Spirit missions, the games themselves, I think plebe year, it was like a blizzard, right? And we still held the game. And I think to this day, I still remember how freezing cold it was, but how excited we were, right? We're plebes, it's Army Navy game. I lived so I was class of 2007. So, with Paul Johnson, we started that, 14-year streak. So like, it was the golden age. It was cool to see, right? Navy football was such, a part of the academy experience for me, as I'm sure it was for you too, Brent. But I think that what Brent is talking about, right? That's really important. Yeah, we're rival from different schools, but that different perspective that Scout and Brent is able to provide us, like solve some of those very challenging issues, is I think why we wanted to go with Scout and specifically Brent as a mentor, and which and I'll just be quite honest, like he saved Havoc AI, the company we started.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I'll just turn it over now. This is a highlight again. Something I talk about on this platform all the time is the power of the Naval Academy network. But I think, as we continue to grow and expand, it's really highlighting the fact that it's not just the Naval Academy network. I think, Brad, you mentioned, like, whether it's West Point or whether it's the Naval Academy, the education, the experience is very similar. And so if you don't mind just talking a little bit about what the Service Academy network has meant for you through your progression through business and how you've worked across the Service Academy network and how it's benefited you in life outside of the service.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to note that, Army Navy has been one of the biggest events in terms of expanding my relationship with the Naval Academy, right? Whether that's in a box, at a dinner, at a fogo de chao, post game, normally that is where I've built most of my relationships with, a lot of people within the Naval Academy. And some of those people, like Ken Braithwaite, who was former Secretary of the Navy and ambassador to Norway, is now a venture partner at Scout, right? And that's come directly out of this camaraderie of a network of people that get together, win or lose, after the Army-Navy game. I think one of the things that's really important to note is that when we look across DoD, major corporations, the government, the permeation of Service Academy grads in key decision-making roles is pretty significant. And so if you're willing to spend the time to navigate that network, to use your existing relationships to get warm intros, then you'll find that there's really not anywhere you can't navigate to. And so that's really then the power of the Service Academy network.
Absolutely. And Paul, how have you seen it in effect in your life already in kind of this short phase outside of, after grad school and in the entrepreneurial world?
100% right. And he's right there to your right. I think that Army Navy relationship, I mean, the first time I met Brad, as he alluded to, we're solving very complex, challenging problems, and we're doing something that is aspirational and mind-blowing, right? And I think I don't want to speak for Brett, but hopefully, like, the fact that I am a Naval Academy has gone through similar experiences, I think hopefully that allowed him to trust me a little bit to say, hey, I can solve these challenges and I can build this mind-blowing thing that I'm telling you I'm going to build in a year. I think we can do this because of the network that Brett described, right? On the business side, there are Service Academy people at all levels of, most major companies, from the investor side to commercial side. Obviously, inside of the DoD, it's the same. So I think when we talk, we're able to talk, with some trust, right? I think with shared backgrounds, with shared values, and the fact that we're all, no matter what we're doing, whether we could be a banker or, whatever we're doing, we still have this desire to solve and give back. And that shared value, I think, makes it easy to kind of like talk about very complex things, technology and relationships and contractual things, right? And I think that's been very cool, right? So I think it's cool, right? I think that one day we probably hate each other, but the rest of the year it is truly, I think, the Soviets going to be. I don't want to forget about the Air Force folks, since we just had an Air Force week where we crushed them.
Yeah,
but it's the same thing, right? I think the three Soviets academies, I think we all help each other out, and it's been very cool and humbling to take advantage of that network.
Yeah. And for you, Brad, as the managing partner of a very successful venture capital firm, when you're looking at founders, when people come to you with their pitch decks or get that warm intro, what does it say about them when they have that Naval Academy, that West Point, that Air Force Academy, degree as a part of their background and resume? What what does that look to you like, and how does it set the foundation for that first initial introduction?
Well, if they went to the Naval Academy, it means they made one substandard decision early in their career. No, I'm just kidding. I think there's two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, regardless of which academy you went to, we normally go first to the military service post academy and try to figure out, okay, what was unique about your military service, or did you lead? Were in Paul's case, what stood out was he was a test pilot and had done technological integration, and then had gone to grad school and had worked at a company that had been working on stuff and was very like mission driven. And so that resonates with us because we want to see that passion.
Yep.
And so that was part of it. I think in general, you probably give academy grads a little bit more credit around integrity, relationships, service, because there's a shared experience. Even if you went to an easier academy like the Naval Academy, you still had some sort of a challenging experience while you were there, in between you guys going into Annapolis and getting drunk, which, we don't have that at West Point.
Yeah, it sounds like you're jealous a little bit. Annapolis is great, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Highland Falls sucks. Not even the McDonald's is good. I was up there for I don't want to date myself, but I was up there for my 30th reunion, and I saw that they added a Chipotle. I think that's the only thing they've added to Highland Falls the last 20 years. So, listen, I think what does matter is this kind of shared sense of service, a commitment to our nation, a commitment to, integrity. And again, sure, there's always some bad apples, but I think for the most part, it's a really good litmus test that gets you a lot further than just a random person that comes in with a pitch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so as we get ready to wind down a little bit here, if you don't mind, Paul, I'll start with you. We're just going to go through I ask every guest who comes on here just to give a little bit of their recruiting pitch as to why they should think. Again, a lot of our audience is prospective high school students, right? There are a lot of people out there who are interested in a service academy. So based on your experience and where it's taken you in life as well, what would be your recruiting pitch about why a young man or woman should consider a service academy education?
I think, obviously, like, it's a very well-rounded education, right? But it is for one reason. It's the people you meet, right? And just the three of us on here, I think that shows you the quality of the people, the different backgrounds, and people, I think, like, they're still my best friends, right? My academy, my company mates, we talk regularly, and I think that's what made me grow up, right? Growing up in LA, in my circle of family and friends there, to go into Annapolis and meeting people from, all over the world was mind blowing, right? Just today, through Brad, I met a West Point grad, who is from Singapore, right? Was a foreign exchange here. Is still, cares so much about the U.S. and obviously the Singaporean relationship. So I think those experiences, you're not going to have anywhere else, right? Because most colleges are going to be regional. But at the service academy, you have that, and you get to do, some very cool things, right? All three of us on here, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Yeah, is it difficult? But it's meant to be, right? I think it's meant to be challenging so that, it makes you a better person and prepared for some of the things all three of us face, solving after we graduated from our respective service academy. So, for me, there were limited opportunities. Like I said, I grew up as a refugee. I grew up, not as wealthy in LA, and just what the Naval Academy did for me, I can't even describe in what. I met my wife because of the Naval Academy. Unfortunately, she's a Notre Dame grad, so I have to live with that. But, we met on spring break when I was still at the academy. So, like, most of my life is based around the Naval Academy, even, 20 years removed.
Yep. And what about you, Brad? What do you got for us?
Listen, I don't think there is a finer set of institutions in the world to develop well-rounded leaders of character. And, that's a combination of one of the top STEM educations in the country, hands down. Doesn't matter. We're in the top 25, top 50 best educations every single year, right? So pure education, I think, is top notch, especially in some of the emerging tech areas where, I'm not as up to date on what the Naval Academy is doing. I know, like the Entrepreneurship Summit, you're about 5 years behind us. So I'm glad you guys have been paying attention, but so I don't know where you are in terms of, the stuff that we're doing, but, we're building a robotics center, an autonomy, we're building all of that into the academy. We're spending more time on nuclear because there's a shortage of nukes. So I think core education and infrastructure, second to none. Yeah. I think, and again, speaking mostly with my familiarity with West Point, the physical challenges and requirements combined with the leadership challenges and requirements is what produces leaders of character. And, the leader of character is one that can go back to the same things, persevere in hard times, provide leadership to their team in challenging times, leverage their network and resources to find problems to challenging times. And these are the things that make great entrepreneurs and great leaders. And so, I would say, though, for all the aspiring entrepreneurs out there, like, I don't want a service academy grad that hasn't served. I think the service is a critical part of the character development and the education post any of the academies. Yep. Go get your service. And, the soup, kind of gave me a hard time. He said, I don't want you to steal my cadets. And I was like, sir, I don't want your cadets, right? Like, I really don't. I don't want them until after, they've been lieutenants and captains in the Army, right? I want them to have that experience. And if they're not going to have that experience, then, it's not really that interesting to me.
Yeah, and just to double down, the Naval Academy is doing really cool stuff. So again, ABET accredited cyber operations major, which is continuing to develop, tons of visiting professors from the NSA giving stuff. They just finished the construction of the brand new Hopper Hall, which is our cybersecurity, like cyber science department building, which actually is a SCIF in the top floor. So some of the 400 level classes in the cyber operations major are taught at the top secret level with specific tools at the NSA. So a lot of really cool opportunities for midshipmen at the Naval Academy as well to continue making progress in the emerging tech sector. So awesome stuff.
And if I could point out, we've been doing nuclear. We've been doing nuclear since 1950. So,
Navy, baby.
I mean, I also think that, we are at a time, given the geopolitical landscape in the world, that I'm hoping people are finding a sense of need to serve because we do need it, right? It is critical to maintaining our lifestyle, unless you all want to be speaking Chinese. And I say that in jest, but, not in jest, right? I mean, there is definitely tension in the South China Sea. The Chinese have rammed the Filipino Navy 5 times now this year. And that creates an interesting dynamic because the U.S. has a security alliance with the Philippines. And so technically, if that escalated, the U.S. would be responsible to defend the Philippines, who has been a long-standing ally and military base provider. So I think that, I'm hoping people find a call to service, and I encourage them to look at the service academies for providing one of the most holistic educations. And in fact, if you do want to be an entrepreneur, go serve for 10 years, get a subject matter expertise, and then go build a great company.
Absolutely. Well, team, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Paul and then Brad, back to you. If you guys have any lasting thoughts or words that you want to leave with the audience, or just, direct people to learn more about Havoc AI and Scout and what y'all are doing, just want to give you the opportunity again to kind of leave the audience with any last thoughts that you have.
No, I want to echo what Brad said, right? I think it is very critical right now. We live in very challenging times, and the service academies are gonna have a huge impact on the next few years and what happens, and people from the service academies, right? I think both Brad and I, that's what we're passionate about. We want to help solve these national security challenges. That's our mission at Havoc AI. It's why we hire a lot of service academy grads and veterans, because everyone kind of, I think, for the first time sees, what's happening on the seas and want to help solve it. So, I appreciate Brad having trust in me and the team at Havoc AI, allowing us to do what we do, which hopefully is to prevent this conflict from happening.
Yeah, Paul, that was well said. Listen, I think I would leave it with this. There's a lot of choices you can make. You can do all sorts of different things. And there's lots of amazing universities. There's only 5 service academies, and they all have unique and different things about them. They have networks that have been around for, we're at, 1802 is when we were founded, right? You guys were somewhere in the 1840s.
45.
Yeah. Again, about 5 decades behind us again. But nonetheless, again, these institutions have been around. They have evolved with the needs of our country. They have been the front line for leadership development. They have produced presidents, senators, congressmen, entrepreneurs, and I am very, very proud of my military service. I am very, very proud of the fact that, I went to West Point, and, I would say go Army, beat Navy.
Love it.
Go Navy, beat Army.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not going to let you get the final word in there, though. So we appreciate it. Brad, thanks so much for coming and sharing this again. What you're doing with Scout is awesome. For anyone who doesn't know, I actually got to do my SkillBridge internship with Scout Ventures out in Austin, built a relationship with Brad and saw all the amazing stuff that they're doing. So again, this is something that was really fun for me to get to bring to life, because it really is just the full accumulation of the Service Academy Network and coming back and supporting grads, doing good things to continue to make a positive impact in the world and support national defense and live that life of service, even if it's outside of the uniform. So really appreciate you both being on here today. Thank you so much. And, we got to beat it to it. So beat Army. Beat Army is
beat Army.
the last one here, baby. All right. To the Academy Insider audience, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe, or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.